Alrighty, guys. So we're gonna go through some of these questions here to make sure that we're on the right track. So let's get started. Okay, so I've just drawn a triangle here, and first thing I'm gonna do is label it. So it's triangle. This reads too, right? Triangle DEF. It just means that we can label these sides um, D, E, and F. And I made E capital E the biggest one because it's showing that angle E is going to be the biggest angle there, right? And this M value too, I can't remember if I explained that in the video, but this just means like angle. So don't worry too much about that M. It's just saying that the angle E is 149 degrees. So this is 149 degrees. Angle F is 9 degrees. And angle, or in side D, so that would be over here, right? This is going to be side D, side E, and side lowercase f. So side D is 24. So now let's write down our sine law. So I'm going to write down f over sine f is equal to d over sine d, which is equal to e over sine e. And notice that I could have made these either way, right? I could have wrote sine f on top and then f on the bottom, or d and yada yada yada. It doesn't matter which way they're flipped, right? You can have one over top of the other. They're still true either way. The ratios are still going to be true. I wrote them this way because we're looking for f. We're looking for a side f. And there's just a little bit less rearranging if you write that on the top. So that's just kind of why I did that. So now let's just fill in what we know. So we know we're looking for f here. So I'm going to include that. So f. Do I know sine f? I do. It's sine 9, right? I know that side. So let's write that in. So sine 9 degrees is equal to d, we know, is 24. Do we know sine d? No, we don't. So I'm just going to write sine d. We know E is, well, we don't know E, sorry, but we know sine E is sine 149 degrees. So you might be looking at this off the bat and saying, well, we don't know enough stuff. Like we can't really do anything with this. But what we can do is we can figure this out right away. Because what do all the angles in a triangle add up to? Well, they add up to 180 degrees, right? So I can figure this out if I just go 180 minus 149 minus 9. That would give me that angle, right? So this angle here is 22 degrees. So we know that. So this is 22 degrees. Okay, so now that we know that this D value down here is actually sine 22. So now we're good. We can use just this part of it. We don't really need this part at all, right? We only need those two to be equal to each other. So if we do that, then we can finish by saying, okay, F is going to be equal to, now I'm going to bring sine 9 up, right? I'm going to multiply both sides by sine 9. So sine 9 is really just going to go diagonally up to the top there. So I'm going to have 24 times sine of 9 over sine 22. So just if we put that in your calculator, you get f is equal to 10. And we don't have to worry about the ambiguous case of sine law in this case because we are looking for a side, right? We're looking for a side. You just have to find the answer for that. That whole ambiguous case of sine law, that's only going to come up when we're looking for an angle. So then you have to check to see if there's two different solutions for your triangle. Okay, I'm going to let you guys do number 2. I think it's pretty straightforward. It's similar to this one. So let's go down, though. Okay, so now this one, though, I'll show you. We will have to use the ambiguous case of sine law for this one, even though we're looking for a side, because we're going to have to find an angle first, right? So we're going to have to find an angle in there. So again, we're going to have the ambiguous case happening here. So this is how I would kind of just set it up, generic triangle. Your triangle doesn't need to look exactly like mine. But then what we're going to see here is that, well, let's write it out. So we've got sine P over, well, let's even fill it in right now. So I know sine P is sine 68. So I'm going to write sine 68 over, and P was 34. So over 34 is equal to, now sine, doesn't really matter which one we do first, sine Q over Q, don't know either of those ones, is equal to sine R over lowercase r. We don't know that one. And we're looking for Q in the end, right? But we don't know sine Q yet. Like, we know these two things. We could find Q right off the bat if we knew what sine Q was, what that angle was. So step number one, we got to figure out what sine Q is before we can find that. Okay, so we're looking for sine Q, and there's going to be two answers here because we're looking for an angle. Or there could be two answers, I guess. We'll check it out. Oh, and I guess I shouldn't have had lowercase r. I should have been 35 here. So now, how can we find Q, though? Well, we can figure out R first, because if we know R, just like in the last question, if we figure out what R is, then we can figure out what Q is, right? Because we know 180. Like, if we know two angles, you can figure out the third by going 180 minus those two. So let's figure out what R is, what this one up here is right now. So the way we can do that is I'm just going to ignore this part of the equation for now. So I'm going to rewrite this as sine 68 over 34 is equal to this part. So sine R over 35. So if you rearrange this, we get sine R is equal to sine 68 times 35 over 34. Okay, so in this case, we're going to say R is equal to sine -1 of, now you could put this in as a decimal if you wanted to. You could actually put in sine 68 times 35 over 34 as a decimal. Or you could write it all out again. So it would be like sine 68 times 35 over 34. And then we'd say R is equal to, so R should be 73 degrees, we'll say. Okay, now here's the ambiguous part though. So remember what your calculator finds when you just put that in. We went sine and we found 73 degrees. Remember back from like our last units there. Let's think about our cast rule for a second. So we know that sine is positive, right? Like we're dealing with a positive version of sine here. So it's always going to be here or here with any of this ambiguous case of sine law. So that's kind of what we're dealing with. We've got two situations. We've got one where sine is out here, and we just figured out that this angle that we just found was 73 degrees. So 73 degrees. That's our reference angle, right? But it's also going to be our actual angle in one situation. So 73 degrees is one answer. But the other answer, the other angle we're talking about, is when this is 73 degrees. So when that is 73 degrees, what we're asking is the other angle that's possible here is this one. It's from there to there. So we need to go 180 minus 73. So this angle here is 107 degrees. So two answers so far. We've got an answer of 73 degrees, and we've got an answer of 107 degrees. Okay, so from this point, we're gonna split this up into two answers. So we'll start here and say, okay, answer one. We'll split that off here. Answer one. And we'll say this is for when it's 73 degrees. So when R is 73 degrees. Okay, so let's write down everything we know for situation one or for answer one. So we know that now R is equal to 73 degrees. We know that P is equal to 68 degrees. And we can figure out Q pretty easily here so far. So we know that. What about for the letters? We know P is equal to 34. We know R is equal to 35. And Q is what we're after, right? That's the one we want to find in the end. Well, we can figure out what Q is here by just going 180 minus these two things, right, up here. That's going to tell us what Q is for that one. So if we do that, you would go 180 minus 73 minus 68. And you would get 39 degrees for that one. So for this situation, for this answer. Okay, so now that we know that, we know this, right? We figured out sine Q. Now we can just rearrange this. So we can go write it back from that first stage. So we've got sine 68 over 34 is equal to, and now we know what capital Q is. That's 39. So we can say sine 39 over lowercase q. If you rearrange for Q, you would get Q is equal to sine 39 times 34 over sine 68. So Q, maybe let's write the answer over here. I'm writing in the room. Is 23 degrees. And notice that the answer at the bottom says it's 23.3. I only made mine significant to the nearest degree, and that's because we rounded off that answer when we got there, right? So that's why. Yeah, okay, so that's one of our answers. So we're good there. Now, answer number 2. We're going to be dealing with, it's the same thing, but we're going to say that R was equal to 107. So we'll say answer 2. R is 107 degrees. So now let's write a little table again. Just make sure we've got everything figured out. So R is equal to 107 degrees. P was 68. Q is what we're going to figure out here in a minute. P is 34. R is 35. And Q is what we're looking for. So if we figure out what Q is by going 100 or 180 minus these two things, we're going to get 5 degrees. Notice that if this ended up being like a negative number, if I would have like tried to subtract these two things and get like a negative number out of that this wouldn't be an answer. But since I do get some angle there, then this does actually work. So there are 2 answers for this triangle. Okay, so we've got that so far. Now all we got to do is plug it back in just like we did here. So we'll go sine 68 over 34 is equal to now sine of 5 degrees. That's our new one there, right? Over Q. If we rearrange for Q, we would get sine of 5 times 34 over sine 68. And then Q would be equal to, and you get 3 degrees. Not degrees, no, sorry. It's not degrees, that's a side. So that wasn't a degree up there either. Okay, so you get 3 for that. So those are your 2 answers. So yeah, I probably should have left you guys a little bit more room. Maybe you can write a little bit smaller than I did, or maybe you can write it on a different piece of paper. But I guess that's all in the past now. You've probably already done this, so all right. Okay, I'm going to move on to 6. Okay, so let's draw a triangle. Hey, I just figured I can draw triangles in one go. That's handy. Okay, anyway. Okay, so let's write down B. So make B on this side maybe. Whoop. And B would be over there. A we'll make over here. And I kind of forgot to say triangle ABC, but anyway, we'll call this side C and that little C there. Okay, so filling this in, we know angle B is 23 degrees. We know A is 14. I'm just going to leave out feet for now just to make things easier. I know B is going to be 11. And we are looking for angle A. So we're looking for this one. Okay, now So we know, let's set this up. We're going to have sine B over B. I'm going to put the numbers in now. You guys probably have done that already. So sine B, we're going to say sine 23 degrees over 11 is equal to sine A, which is what we're looking for, right, over 14. And that's pretty much all we need to do, right, so far. So you could say sine C over C, but we're going to ignore that in a minute. So let's just leave it at that for now. And let's solve for sine A. So if you rearrange this, we would have sine A is equal to 14 times sine 23 over 11. So then A would be equal to sine -1 of 14 times sine 23 over 11. So A is going to be equal to, it's going to be equal to 29.8. And I'll leave the decimal in this time, just so it's matching up with the answers at the bottom. So 29.8 degrees. Now, is it 29.8 degrees? Well, remember, with all of these ones, we're dealing with two angles, one there and one there. So I know that this is 29.8 degrees, but what is this angle? That's the other possible angle that we could be dealing with, right? So I'm going to have to go 180 minus, well, this is 29.8 degrees as well. So 180 minus that, 29.8, is equal to 150.2 degrees. Okay, so that's the other situation. So we got two possibilities here now. Now, we just got to check out to see if they actually are legit answers. So what I mean by that is, let's do let's go answer 1. So to make sure that these actually are legit, I know the first situation, this would be 29.8 degrees, right? Well, let's see if we went A is equal to 29.8 degrees and B is equal to 23 degrees. What would C be? Well, you could just go 180 minus these two angles, and you would get C is equal to 127 degrees, or 27.2 degrees. And that's a legitimate answer, right? So like that could work. That's definitely an answer. But what about a different situation? We have answer 2. So now we're going to say A, the other possibility, 150.2 degrees. B is equal to 23 degrees. And C, well, C would just be subtracting these two things. So like 180 minus those. So then we'd end up with 6.8 degrees, which is also a legitimate number. It's not negative, right? So we've got two answers here, right? So they both check out. So your answers would be 29.8, and it would also be 150.2. Because they both work out. It might not be the case though. You might check here, and let's say for C, you ended up getting like a negative answer when you went 180 minus those two. Well, that wouldn't work out then, right? They need to be able to add up to 180. So there are two answers in this case. All right, let's find one that doesn't though. Doesn't work out. Okay, so I've labeled out a bit of a triangle here. So we know that this is 131 degrees. And I've labeled those two sides, and it wants to know angle B, so that one. Okay, so we're going to say sine B over, well, I'm going to write an 8 right now because lowercase b is 8, so over 8 is equal to sine 131, so sine C, over C, which is 25. Okay, now rearranging this, we can find that B is going to be equal to the inverse sine of 8 times sine 131 over 25. That's just rearranging, right? I just kind of skipped that step that time. So B, if you put that into your calculator, So I'll actually show you with the calculator how to do it too, just in case you're having trouble with these. So I go trig, second sine, and then I go 8 times trig sine 131. And then I move my cursor over to make sure I'm not like in the brackets of the sine part of it anymore. And then you just go divided by 25. And the nice thing about these ones, when there's no adding or subtracting part of it, you can. It doesn't matter about order of operations. I could have done this like in any kind of order. I could have went sine times 8 divided by 35. I could have went 8 divided by 25 times sine 30 or sine 131. It doesn't really. You can't really mess up too bad with these ones. So that's kind of nice. Yeah. Okay. So that's it, and then just enter. So 13.9, so 14 degrees. Okay, so we're going to have B is equal to 14 degrees. But remember, whenever we find an angle, what did we really find? We found the reference angle. So this was 14 degrees, meaning this was also 14 degrees. But then the other angle is that one as well. So that would be 180 minus 14. 166 degrees. All right, so two potential answers. That one's definitely right. We got to check to see if this one is right as well. So what we're going to do is C. Okay, so we'll put in place of B, we'll put 14 degrees, like the first answer had. Well, if I want to just make sure for A, then I'd go, okay, well, 131 for, C is equal to that. B is 14 degrees. Then A would be, oh, that looks like 140, doesn't it? I'll leave it like that. So 131 plus 14. So if you tried to find A, you would find a real number, or a number above 0, I shouldn't say not real. But so you get 35 degrees, which would be legit answer, right? 35 degrees. But what if we went over here? So we said, okay, what if angle B was 166 degrees? Okay, well then you'd have, C was equal to 131. B, we're saying, is 166 now. What would that angle A be? So if this is correct, this is saying that angle A would be a negative 117 degrees. Well, that doesn't make sense, right? You can't. We're not talking about negative angles here. That doesn't really make sense with what we're doing, right? So yeah, that doesn't work. So obviously 166 is not an answer. So we only have one answer here. We only have an answer of 14. The other way of thinking about it, just before I go, is that you just look at your two angles that you have so far, like this one and this one. They're already over 180 degrees, so it doesn't work out. So however you want to think about that one. Okay, so the answers are at the bottom. I think I've given you guys enough to make sure that you get done, like each type of situation. So make sure that you guys are confident with this, because this will be what the next quiz and exam will be on. So the next thing we got is cosine law, and I think you'll find it a little bit easier, but yeah, definitely want to practice through this stuff. So okay, so that's it for that video.